Welcome to NFL Nexus, where we go deep on the stories that matter. You know, the Indianapolis Colts have felt like a team in search of an identity for a while now, really ever since Andrew Luck hung up his cleats. They've been on this quarterback carousel trying to find some stability, and now, looking ahead to the 2026 offseason, they are at an absolutely critical crossroads. I mean, we're not just talking about a couple of roster tweaks here. This is about huge franchise-altering questions surrounding their veteran leaders on defense and, of course, the future of the most important position in all of sports. The choices they make in the next few months, they're going to define this team for the next 5 years. Easy.
Okay, let's just start with this quote right here because it really gets to the absolute heart of the problem. You know, NFL general managers, especially a guy like Chris Ballard, they're usually masters of saying a lot without saying anything. It's all cliches and coach speak. So when a GM uses language this direct, scary concussion, it just tells you everything. It shows you the real weight of the challenges the Colts were up against. Their 2025 season was totally torpedoed by injuries. And this quote just perfectly captures that human side of things, you know? It's not just about cold, hard roster moves. It's about the well-being of the players.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. First, we'll set the scene and talk about how that 2025 season fell apart. Then, we're going to get into the really serious health concerns facing two absolute cornerstones of their defense, DeForest Buckner and Charvarius Ward. After that, we'll flip over to the offense and the shaky situation they have in the quarterback room. And finally, we'll look at a potential draft solution that might be a bit of a gamble, but man, it could really shape this team for a long time.
Hey, before we really get into the weeds here, if you enjoy this kind of detailed NFL breakdown, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It's really the best way to support what we're doing here at NFL Nexus. And you know, while you're there, go ahead and click that like button and get ready to jump in the comments. We definitely want to hear what you think the Colts should do this offseason. Okay, let's get to it.
You know, if you had to sum up the 2025 Colts season in just one word, that word would be injuries. Now look, I get it. Every team in the league deals with injuries. It's a violent game. But some teams just get absolutely hammered by them, and the Colts were definitely one of those teams this past year. We're talking about a defense that on paper looked great, Pro Bowl talent all over the place. But week after week, it felt like they were just plugging holes, throwing backups, and even practice squad guys into huge situations. The injuries weren't just random. They were concentrated in the worst possible spots, especially on that defense. And it just led to this slow-motion collapse that sent their whole season down the drain.
All right, our first deep dive here is on defensive tackle DeForest Buckner. And this is a story about leadership, resilience, and just pure grit. See, Buckner isn't just another guy on the roster. He's the absolute heart and soul of that defensive line. He's the one who sets the tone. He's the guy who eats up double teams so other guys can make plays. But a really nasty nagging neck issue bothered him all season long and has started raising some very real questions about the future for the 32-year-old veteran, a guy who was supposed to be a pillar of that defense.
This timeline right here really tells you the whole story. Let's just walk through it because it shows what an incredible, crazy journey this was for Buckner. This wasn't just a simple injury. It started with nerve problems in his neck. Now, for a 300-pound lineman whose job is basically a series of car crashes, nerve issues are a huge red flag. It can mess with your strength, your grip, everything. And look at what he did. He flew to Panama during the bye week to get a specialized stem cell treatment. Think about that. A player going to another country trying anything he can to get back on the field. Even after all that, they still had to put him on IR. But he didn't quit. He fought his way back for a Week 16 game on Monday Night Football against his old team, the Niners no less. That's just pure leadership, man.
So what's the front office saying? Well, they are very publicly, very clearly getting behind their guy. Chris Ballard's comments here are so important. First, he says the surgery was a success. Okay, that's the big medical hurdle, check. But the second part is just as telling. His mindset is he's going to play again. You got to know, in the NFL, that's code. That's the GM signaling to everyone, the fans, the locker room, that the player's will to come back is there. And since he's got 1 year left on his contract, that statement pretty much says the Colts expect him to play it out, and they're counting on him being that leader again.
And boom, here it is, straight from the man himself. He put this right on his Instagram for the whole world to see. This isn't some hopeful quote from a GM. This is a declaration. Next season, I will be complete. That word, complete, says it all. It tells you he knows he was playing hurt, that he wasn't the real DeForest Buckner out there. He's basically promising a return to his all-pro, game-wrecking self. For a Colts defense that was in pieces last year, getting a fully healthy, motivated, and probably pretty angry DeForest Buckner back, that would be absolutely massive for them.
Okay, now we have to shift gears to a very different and honestly, a much more worrying situation. The road ahead for cornerback Charvarius Ward is, well, it's not nearly as clear. This was a guy they went out and spent big money on in free agency. We're talking a big 3-year deal to be their lockdown #1 corner. He was supposed to be the guy shadowing all the top receivers in the AFC. But instead of shutting down offenses, he's now facing this incredibly tough personal decision about his health, his family, and whether he should even keep playing this game. The whole story really comes down to this one number, 3. Just let that sink in. Not 1, not 2, 3 separate diagnosed concussions in just one season. I mean, this is where an injury stops being a football problem and becomes a serious long-term life problem. In today's NFL, with everything we now know about brain trauma and CTE, that's the degenerative brain disease, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a player getting 3 concussions that quickly sets off every single alarm bell imaginable, for the league, for the doctors, and of course for the player and his family.
And this quote, wow, this is just incredibly powerful. It comes directly from Ward. The conversation isn't about football anymore, right? It's not about contracts or who they're playing next week. This is about life. This is a father telling his son, walk away from the game, man, for your own good. It just shows you the insane amount of pressure and the internal battle he must be fighting. You've got this super competitive athlete on one side, but on the other, you've got your family begging you to think about your future, about being a healthy husband and dad for the next 40 or 50 years.
This slide really lays out the tough spot everyone is in. From the team's side, Chris Ballard is saying all the right things, of course. He's stressing that Ward's long-term health is the #1 priority. And that's the right thing to say. But we also have to face the cold, hard business reality here. The Colts paid big money for a guy they expected to be their top corner for 3 years, and they got 7 games out of him, so his very personal decision has huge football consequences. If he decides to retire, it leaves a massive gaping hole at one of the most critical positions in the game and forces the team to completely rethink their entire defensive plan for 2026.
So let's step back. You've got your best defensive lineman coming off major neck surgery, and your #1 cornerback is thinking about retiring. The pressure suddenly shifts, right? It all falls on the other side of the ball, and the big question becomes, can the offense carry this team? Can they just go out there and win shootouts while the defense gets figured out? Well, you'd certainly hope so. But unfortunately, the situation on offense is anything but stable, especially at quarterback.
So let's dive into this quarterback mess the Colts have on their hands. It's not as simple as having a starter and a backup. They're in this really weird, shaky position where they can't fully commit to their short-term guy or their potential long-term guy. And in the NFL, everything starts with the quarterback. Your entire offensive scheme, who you sign in free agency, your draft strategy, it's all built around that guy under center. This level of uncertainty just creates this shaky foundation that really affects everything the team is trying to do. This slide really breaks down the whole problem. So first, let's look at Anthony Richardson. That phrase, increasingly more likely they'll move on, that's that. But what's even worse is that second point. The owner, the head coach, and the GM have all been asked about him, and they've all refused to commit to him for 2026. In the NFL, that's not just a red flag, it's like a giant flashing sign that says, we're done. Then you look at their planned starter, Daniel Jones. The problem here is all medical. Relying on any QB coming off a torn Achilles is a huge risk, but especially for a mobile guy like him. That injury can just rob you of that explosive power that makes your whole game work. It's a massive, massive gamble. So, with all this instability on both sides of the ball, the front office has to be looking at every possible option to get this franchise on solid ground. And that brings us to a potential solution, a really interesting idea that popped up in a recent 2026 NFL mock draft, one that could maybe, just maybe, solve their biggest long-term problem. The mock draft throws out a fascinating name, Ty Simpson, the quarterback from Alabama. Now, if you follow college football, you know this kid. He was a 5-star recruit, a guy people were talking about as a potential #1 overall pick before the season even started. But the key here isn't just the player, it's the value. The analysis calls it a potential major slam dunk because of where they might get him. If you can draft a player with that kind of talent and ceiling in the second round, well, that just completely changes the entire risk-reward conversation.
And his play on the field? It absolutely backs up the hype. This was his first year as the full-time starter in the SEC, and he put up some seriously elite numbers. You can see it right there, 11th in the whole country in both passing, yards, and touchdowns. That's real production. But look at that last number, because it might be the most important one. Only 5 interceptions. That tells you he's not just a gunslinger. He can push the ball downfield, but he's also smart with it. That combination of playmaking and decision-making, that is the holy grail for NFL GM.
Now, here's the elephant in the room. The risk is pretty obvious, right? The Colts already took a big swing on a super talented 1-year college starter with Anthony Richardson, and it looks like that might not work out. You can just imagine the debate in their draft room. Some people would be terrified to make that same kind of bet again. But the key difference, the thing that changes everything, is the draft pick. The reward is a potential franchise cornerstone, a guy with top-of-the-draft talent, but you get him without spending a first-round pick. That lower risk could make his talent just too exciting to pass up.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. This isn't a team that just needs to fix one or two little things. The Indianapolis Colts are standing at a genuine, franchise-defining crossroads. They have to make multiple huge, interconnected decisions that are going to send ripples through this organization for years to come.
This right here is the whole takeaway. Just look at these questions. Buckner's health basically determines if their defensive line has a pulse. Ward's personal choice could mean a total teardown of their secondary. The gamble on their current QBs could either stabilize things or set them back another year. And their draft strategy, do they play it safe or do they swing for the fences again with a guy like Ty Simpson? Each one of these is a critical domino, and how they fall is going to determine where this team is 3, 4, even 5 years from now.
We really hope this deep dive was helpful for you. And hey, if you want a really cool way to support what we do here at NFL Nexus, check out the link in the description for our new NFL-themed coloring books. We had a blast putting these together. They're awesome for kids, grandkids, and honestly, even for adults who just want to chill out and color their team's logo. You can find them at the link or just scan the QR code right there on your screen.
And we'll leave you with this last question to think about. When you look at all these problems, the health of the defense, the shakiness at quarterback, the gamble on the draft, which one of these decisions do you think will be the one that defines the next era of Colts football? If you were the GM, what's the one thing you absolutely have to get right? Is it fixing the defense, stabilizing the QB room for now, or betting it all on the future? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching.